Okay, I think we will go ahead and get started. So first, I just want to welcome everyone to today's Lens Studio workshop in partnership with Altasea. I'm Shandell Weeby. I'm a part of Snap's corporate philanthropy team. My work on the team is really driven by expanding expanding equitable access to education and career pathways. So having the opportunity to be with you all today is truly a privilege. I first wanted to send a big thank you to Robin and Jenny and the Altasea team who really made today possible and for kind of bringing everyone to the table. So big thank you to both of you. So without much further ado, I want to introduce you to the stewards of today's workshop that will really bring to life the power of Lens Studio that it has as a creative tool and as an educational tool, I think that you'll all find. Because as we all know, it's you all, the students that are joining us here today that are the future innovators and creators and leaders of tomorrow. So it's my pleasure to introduce Clay Visa, also known as World Space, who will be leading today's Lens Studio workshop. So a little bit about Clay. He's a member of Snap's official lens creator community. We call them OLCs. And he's an award-winning creative focused on crafting experiences where interaction and narrative really come to life together. So Clay has collaborated with global creatives and brands such as Google, Apple, Airbnb, Nike. And those are just a couple. So needless to say, we're so honored to have you here leading this workshop today, Clay. And then I'm also privileged to be able to introduce Dr. Nathan Churches, co-founder and chief science officer. I mean, I think that's a title we all would aim for, of Holdfast Aquaculture. Dr. Churches is fueled by a passion for sustainable seafood production and marine biology. One of the past projects that he's worked on, which I thought was really cool, was building an experimental shellfish hatchery on Catalina. Catalina is one of my favorite places, so that was such a cool read. And in his role at Holdfast, he applies genomics, breeding, and hatchery production to develop sustainable seafood products for the region. That's a lot of accolades, and as you can tell, we're super excited to have you both here. But as you may have guessed, Dr. Churches will so kindly be providing us with some real-world context during the workshop as we jump into this marine life-inspired experience. So without with all that said, I'll turn it over to Clay and Dr. Churches. Thank you both so much.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I'm just gonna give a little shout out to Clay for putting this together. And we kind of came up with a series of learning objectives together on the side. And so I'll be here to answer any questions, but I'm also stoked to learn more about Lens myself. And so I might not be doing that much talking, but I think Clay's got the teaching points that we went over down. So here to answer any other questions anybody has though.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's not often I get to do a workshop with a scientist like Dr. Church and actually work with a real marine biologist. So this was super exciting for me to be able to collaborate with Dr. Church in creating this sort of immersive environment that we're gonna dive into and create, together. I'm gonna just share my screen briefly and give you a little bit of background on myself and the types of projects I've worked on. And I am happy to say that, like, as of this year, I'm a full-time lens creator. I make my living creating Snap lenses. So that's I'm living testimony to the fact that AR is getting more mainstream and you can make a career out of it. So I will share my screen. All right, so in the chat window, I've put 3 links. If you want to follow along, you will need Lens Studio. So there's a download link for Lens Studio, and there's also a project that you can open and be able to push your own lens. And then there's some bonus assets, bonus sea life assets that I can go into later on how to sort of bring in 3D objects like different sea life into your project. But welcome everybody to the Altasea Lens Studio workshop. My name is Clay. As this was mentioned before, I'm official lens creator on Snapchat, And I'm going to give you a little brief overview on how I got into all this. I come from a visual effects background. I worked in film. The time I got into Lens Studio, I was working with Ridley Scott on sci-fi projects, and I had so many ideas in my head around crazy like alien drones, different sort of alien life forms, and I just had stumbled on Snapchat's tool, Lens Studio. So I remember the day where I was trying this out and getting into it, and I wanted to prototype like a giant drone, like swooping in the size of a building. And Lens Studio over my coffee break allowed me to do something like that. So I'm mentioning it just to let everybody know how easy it is to get into augmented reality and start making your own creations. My background is in interactive design. I was doing a lot of websites and different types of experiences using a flat screen. And I remember the day that I saw AR, I was at a hackathon, and just being able to see a hologram in front of you and being able to walk around it is super exciting. And from that moment on, I kind of moved beyond the flat screen into like augmented reality and started creating all of these lenses. I've created over 100 social AR lenses shared by people all over the world. I remember getting a call from Snapchat while I was at work, and I didn't know anything about Lens Studio. And they were talking to me and they said, "Did you know your lens is trending?" And I didn't even know what trending meant. I didn't know that people were seeing the work that I was putting out there, but it's pretty crazy. I made a donut lens, and basically it was a half donut spinning around, and people were actually using this thing and creating fun videos with it. And it got, 1 million views of, just people kind of using your lens. And it totally blew me away that there was this community of AR creators all kind of like creating this type of content on Snapchat. And since then, like I said, I've done hundreds of them. I've got over 3 billion impressions on my lenses. I love food, as you can see here. A lot of my work is food-based kind of themes that I explore. I'm gonna see if I can launch my reel so you can get a little bit. It might be too laggy on Zoom, so I'll keep going. But yeah, let's talk about augmented reality and Snapchat. The beauty of being an AR creator like myself and the community that I'm part of is there are 210 million people on Snapchat daily, and your work really goes out there from Lens Studio, publishing it to the world, and people can actually start using your AR lens creations within Snapchat. I'll touch briefly on this. There's something on the Snapchat app called Lens Discovery, and basically it's called Lens Explorer, and it allows you to see all the lenses that have been created in Lens Studio. And chances are, if you do create something, it can end up in this sort of Lens Discovery screen where millions of people have access to your work. And that's kind of me personally. What I love about this is like you can share your work with so many people. I wanted to do a practical example on what we were creating. This isn't totally necessary, but if you do have Snapchat, open the app and point your device at this Alt-C snap code, and then tap the larger circle outline for the camera and take a picture of it. What that will do is it'll allow you to unlock this lens for 48 hours and actually see what we're going to be building. So you can't see my screen here, but I'll explain what I'm seeing. Basically, I've launched the lens and I'm seeing a screen very similar to this, where you can tap and place a full underwater scene in front of you, and then literally like walk around all the objects. And that's what we're going to be going through today for the project. And my hope is by the end of this workshop, you will be able to push your own underwater sea life and share it with people on Snapchat, and just, yeah, have fun with it. As I mentioned, Lens Studio is extremely easy. It's really broken down into 3 main steps. Basically, what you're doing is you're importing the content into Lens Studio. Then you're building the experience by publishing the lens. And then once you publish the lens, you'll get a snap code and you can share it with friends, or share it with a ton of other people on Snapchat in Lens Explorer. So today we're using our underwater lens studio project, and we'll learn the basics of AR creation. And going to the next page, this project utilizes simple layers that we'll be able to turn on and off to customize our lens and see kind of like how a lens is built, basically a behind the scenes look at all the layers that can make up an experience inside of Lens Studio. So if you do open the project in the link that I provided in chat, you'll notice that there are different layer names. And I'm just going to touch briefly on the various layers in this lens. We have water ambience, which is the kind of underwater ambience with the caustics and kind of making it feel like you're under the ocean. We have these circular kind of bokeh effects representing the nutrients of different sea life and sort of plankton in the water. And then we have a bunch of different plants inside of the plants folder. We've got a large fish and a bait fish. And then I'm also including some assets for a crab and seahorse if you want to download that.
So Clay, sorry to interrupt. I don't see the link that you're referring to the folder. I don't know if you can throw that up again.
Yeah, for sure.
I believe everyone should have a copy as well. But if not, yeah, I can drop the link of the folder back in the chat. I got it.
That'd be amazing. Yeah. And I can put it in there too. But yeah, I think this is a good point, Dr. Church, if you wanted to kind of just discuss the overview of a typical underwater environment and the types of sea life and just how it all works together in this amazing way to cause balance.
Right, yeah. So here you can see sort of several of the, I guess, elements that we're going to build today. And we chose these for a reason. They're not just random. We want to build a biodiverse ecosystem. And so we want to kind of go over a couple of cool marine biology topics. And the first one is nutrient cycling. So everything in the ocean that's alive relies on nutrients, right? Just like you and I rely on nutrients, the same thing happens for marine creatures. And when I say nutrients, I'm talking about things like nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, phosphorus, other things that create up sort of the vitamins or nutrients that things need to live. And so one of the first things that we're going to build into the system are these nutrients, okay? And they're going to be represented by these cool oxygen bubbles. So that represents this nutrient cycling. We can go deeper into that in the future, or in, you can ask me more questions about that. But without nutrients and nutrient cycling, the ocean wouldn't exist as we know it, okay? And then the next sort of levels up, we're going to go up the trophic scale, and we're going to introduce this idea of a trophic scale, okay? So if you've ever thought about where your food comes from, okay, the energy that's in your body, it all essentially goes back to sun energy, okay? And so basically the energy that comes down into our planet is converted by photosynthesizing organisms, things that take the sun energy and will literally from thin air or from water use sun and a couple of other chemical reactions to make food basically out of nothing, if you will, out of just the sun energy. And so a lot of those creatures that do this in the ocean are kind of too small to see with the naked eye, but some of them that are larger are represented here in the seaweeds, okay? So these represent sort of the base of a food chain, okay? These are what we call primary producers, if I was going to give it a key vocabulary word. Okay, so primary producers are the sort of the base of everything in terms of the food chain. Next up the food chain, you have things that feed on primary producers, and those are called primary consumers. Again, a lot of those in the ocean are so small that you can't see them with the naked eye. But things that eat primary producers or primary consumers are things like seahorses, or maybe these like tiny little fish that you see here. Okay, and so those are connected and they build on that first trophic layer. So now we're up to the second or third trophic layer. And then you have sort of the top layer. These are the large predators, and you can see those in these tuna here, or tuna-like things. And those essentially prey on the primary and secondary consumers. And so from that, we've got a pyramid, right? You've got primary producers, the things that photosynthesize and turn sun energy into food, and then everything above them, which sort of eats each other down that food chain. Okay, and so with that, we've sort of built a biodiverse system, and you can see that all of these sort of, I don't know, live in conjunction with each other. You can't have the big fish without the very baseline nutrients and primary producers. So the other thing that we have in here is a crab, right? And so that's another important part of sort of the food chain. And those represent what are called detritivores. And detritivores are things that essentially eat dead stuff, okay? So they are the ones that are gonna recycle nutrients that are in the ocean back into either the nutrient cycle or into the food chain by eating and decomposing dead stuff, okay? So that's what crabs represent here. And then the last thing that we have here are some coral sort of lookalikes in the studio. And we put those in here because they're important to bring up the topic of climate change. Okay, so climate change is a big problem, as I'm sure you're well aware. And in the ocean, it really manifests itself via ocean acidification. Okay, and the problem with ocean acidification is that things like corals, or even the crabs that you see here in this sort of display, can't build their skeletons, right? When the ocean acidifies, they can't sort of get the fundamental building blocks to build their skeletons. So within this lens, it's going to be cool. It's going to be fun. We're going to build like a little world. But again, it wasn't just arbitrary. We built sort of a full biodiverse ecosystem. So just think about those trophic scales, nutrient cycling, and ocean acidification as we go through this.
Wow. Yeah, and definitely put all your scientific questions to Dr. Church, because that was pretty amazing and mind-blowing. I'm going to focus on the technical side of Lens Studio, but if there's any questions to do with the eco side of this lens, definitely put it in chat. We'd love to kind of hear any questions on that as well. So this is a good time for everybody to launch Lens Studio if you do have it. I'm going to walk through some basics of what we're going to be touching on today. And I got to say, like, launching a new software is one of the hardest things to do, because you're really kind of like, where do I start? And my goal with this is to get people pushing lenses as quick as possible. And just know that you don't need to know every feature in here to take part in this and push a lens live on Snapchat. So starting out, one area that we're going to be using is called the objects panel. And the objects panel is basically the equivalent of layers in Photoshop. So you can see those little check marks up on the screen. Those are all layers. And what we're going to do in the project that you have is we're going to turn these layers on and off to create and build up this biodiverse ecosystem. The next panel that you need to know about is the resources panel. And the resources panel has everything in it. All the fish you see here, all the plants, the particles, all that is basically your resources panel. And the way Lens Studio works is you have a resources panel with all your assets in them, and then you can drag them into your visible layers in the objects panel. I've tried to keep this really simple, and we don't need to touch that if we don't want. It'll be kind of a bonus thing that we can go through later on. But for now, I just want everybody to have fun in the objects panel. And then the last thing I'm going to touch on here is the preview window. And the preview window allows you to see what it might look like on a device. If you're in Snapchat and you're launching this lens and you're walking around, the preview window gives you a really good idea of what that lens could look like. And then one of my favorite parts about Lens Studio is this button up here that says send to Snapchat. It's extremely useful to me as a creator as I'm working on building environments or building lenses, that I can hit send to Snapchat. It'll open up on my phone and I can test out augmented reality and walk around it and experience it, and then make the decisions. Maybe I want to try a different material. It's as simple as, if I wanted to try making the fish gold, I would select my gold material, apply it to the fish, and then hit send to Snapchat again and walk around and see my creation live in augmented reality. It's really a game changer. There's no other software I know of that does this right now. Usually you have to have your phone hooked up to it. Even a few years ago, it was really painful to get augmented reality out to your phone so quickly. So that's why I love Lens Studio, is because I can just push my lens from Lens Studio and look at it in my phone and see it right there in front of me. It's really exciting. So I'm going to dive into Lens Studio. If you have Lens Studio right now, please open it up. If you don't, you can follow along. I'm going to try to annotate this the best I can to kind of like walk you through what I'm doing here. So all the layers that you have currently should be up here in this objects panel. You can see my pink arrow, and I'm going to go through the different layers right now. So you've got your camera layer, and then this layer right here with the little yellow on it, that is our underwater environment. So if you do have Lens Studio open, I'll show you what happens when you turn that layer on. You start building the scene out. Let's see. Okay, so I'm clicking on this little thing here, and you can see right there that we've got an underwater environment complete with caustics, and it starts to feel like you're actually underwater. At least paints the picture of that. The next layer that I want to mention is, as Dr. Church said, these tiny microscopic animals and plankton and all those sort of nutrients that live in the water. So if I go to, I'll annotate again for everybody. So if I go to this layer, it says plankton. And if I click on this little square, that should turn on that layer. So here we go. So you can see now we've got a particle effect, and Lens Studio does particles really well. They also give you a particle library that you can access from up here where it says Asset Library. There's a ton of really fun things to play around with inside of the Asset Library. Everything from materials, like this water material that I have here, to particle effects. And you can really just start layering these into the software and building an entire immersive experience around that. So that's my plankton layer. The other layer below that, and you'll start to see this really come to life, is the plant layer. Since we've got nutrients and microscopic organisms and oxygen, you can see that we now have plants. So you can see how we've got the particles, the background ambience, and we've got some plants, and it's already starting to come together and look like a lens. I'm going to turn on some of these additional layers here. This is a layer of minnows in the background. So you can see them swimming around in the background. These were created in 3D software. And the great thing about Lens Studio is you can bring in 3D assets. And after this, this sort of walkthrough, I'll be sharing some resources where you can get free 3D assets. But a really, really good place to start is right in Lens Studio. I'm going to open up the asset library just to show everybody how that works. So clicking on the asset library, you can see that there are 3D assets right here. All you have to do is click on those and those should appear in your scene. So here's some examples of the 3D assets. You've got a butterfly pack. You've got a lot of cool 3D assets that you can just, literally drag and drop into the scene. This is a new feature. I'm really excited about it. A lot of community members in Snapchat and Lens Studio created these so people could use them and enjoy them. And then we have our 2D assets right here. It handles 2D very well, and you can even integrate GIFs from Giphy into Lens Studio. So even with 3 or 4 GIFs, you can make something pretty cool. And then one of my favorite things to do in Lens Studio is to play with materials. So this material here of the water underwater is actually right inside of this asset pack. And you can click on that and it gives you a really good starting point to build an underwater scene. But yeah, you can do soap bubbles, you can do car paint. They even have a donut material, which is kind of awesome in my books, and a fur material. So they've really simplified the creation process by providing tools and materials for you within Lens Studio. So definitely play around with that, have fun with it. There's some super cool effects. This bokeh effect, I wanted to use something from the asset pack, and that's what we're using right here to communicate the plankton and microscopic level of like sea life. So I'm going to shut that and continue building the scene. So if you're following along, there is a layer in here with some different fish. And if I turn on that layer, you can see my fish in the layer. The cool thing about this is I can actually copy and paste to duplicate these. And then what I can do is create multiple fish and even move them around and compose them. And when you start doing that, you get into spatial layout, and that's a whole nother area. Is like, people are pretty familiar with how it looks to do things on flat screen, but how does it look when you're dealing with 3-dimensional space? So luckily the preview window, you can see me kind of moving that fish around. It gives you a really nice representation of how, these can be laid out inside of AR and how it's going to look in an environment. Another thing to mention while I'm doing that is there are different types of previews. You can turn on the camera, and I'm going to try this to be interesting to see if this works. I'm inside of the environment right now. So if you do have an effect and you want to just turn on your camera, Snap's made it really easy to just toggle this button on and submerge yourself underwater in this case. So I'm going to go back to my preview screen and continue to build the lens. So I'll turn on another fish here, and you really just start to layer in different marine life or whatever you're building, and you can see how quickly it really all came together in one full experience, and how creating experiences like this can be super useful in the context of a classroom, and being able to walk around and experience this virtual exhibit in your own space. So I think it's really cool. If I was still in university, I would definitely think about showcasing an idea in 3D using Lens Studio. What's the best way? Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to just look at chat right now to see if if any questions have come through, and maybe somebody could read them off to me if there are any questions, or if anybody wants to put questions in here, definitely let me know. So I will keep on going, and I'll stop for any questions. But yeah, so one of the coolest things about this right now now that I have my scene, I can go up to send to Snapchat and have my phone with me and literally see it pop up in Snapchat and be able to test out my lens, which is amazing. So if you do have the project open and you want to try it out and actually push a lens, you can definitely do that. It takes, depending on the file size, it takes a little bit of time, but for the most part, it's super simple to get it from Lens Studio onto your phone and be able to walk around it. Another thing to mention is once you've pushed the lens and seen it on your phone, you can create your own icon for it. So in this case, we have the Alta-C icon, the lens name, and we can add a lens preview that allows people on Snapchat to see kind of what it looks like before they launch the lens. And the last part of the process, which is awesome, is this button up here. I'll highlight it with the annotation so you can see. I'll put an arrow here. So yeah, this button right up here, this is amazing because if I hit that, I can publish my lens and like literally have this lens live in Snapchat within, on average, even 20 minutes. So I'm going to just walk through this publishing phase right now. So right now it's exporting the lens. Takes a little bit of time. We can always revisit this if anybody has any questions. And once this lens is published, I can choose whether I want this to be a community lens, or if you're doing brand work, a business lens. And I'll touch a bit on brand work while that's happening here. So as I mentioned, I've been able to, lucky enough to be a full-time Snapchat lens creator and work with a lot of brands. And sort of what's happening now, especially with COVID, is there's really this huge demand for augmented reality because people couldn't really be together. And in order to try out different, products or different experiences, brands have really been utilizing AR, like brands like Nike to put some shoes on you, or brands like Adidas to wear a jersey. So this is definitely a really hot area. The whole area of digital wearables and branded augmented reality lenses is becoming super, super needed from a skill set standpoint. And you guys are definitely, even this workshop, if you push a lens after the workshop, you'll be some of the first, people in this industry to have content out there, because there is a lot of content, but AR is really new. We weren't in the same situation we were at even 3 years ago, and there's new features that come out regularly. So it's super exciting, just to have this skill set, and I'm really thankful that it's in demand and I'm able to make a living off of it. So the screen I'm on here, there's a few things you're going to need to do before you submit the lens. You need to have a lens name. So we're calling our lens Alta-C. And then visibility wise, we can make this public or hidden. If I'm working with a client, I can make it hidden and I can have them test it out. In this case, we can push it public so that it goes out into Snapchat and can be discovered. And then from here, all I do is I hit submit lens. So right here, I'm all set. I get my congratulational dancing orange panda, and I can look in my lenses and actually see right there, Alta C in review. So what will happen is once it's past review, which can be as little as 15 or 20 minutes, it'll be public, and you actually get a snap code that you can either download or just hold your phone up to it and snap it, and it will launch your lens, which is so amazing. Like if you look at all the technology that has gone into this to make it that easy to make augmented reality lenses, it's phenomenal. So yeah, I am going to stop my screen share and be available for any questions if anybody has any. Looking in chat right now. So Chandel, I don't know how long we want to allow for questions, but I'm definitely here to go over anything additional.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I was just curious to hear from, Dr. Churches as well. Like, what do you think, from in like a climate change, education, whatever angle you really want to take it, that you see that this technology and where kind of technology is going into the future to be a part of kind of the education and awareness space for these issues.
Yeah, well, honestly, my mind is kind of racing because I had put off sort of dealing with looking at exactly what lens was until this meeting, and I've been seeing previews, but now that I see how you actually make it, so I'm kind of on the same level as everybody else probably in this workshop. It's really exciting. I mean, we all, or at least a majority of us, probably grew up with the Magic School Bus and programs like that. And you can create that, it seems, for real. You can end up with a video of yourself going through the human body, for example, taking a dive in the ocean. And you can really, I think you could leverage this as if you had classes and get students to both be on their phone and be learning at the same time. So I think it's a really, it has a ton of potential. And I was actually going to ask if Snap has considered collaborating with educators, or if this is to create curricula at any level, or if this is kind of the first jumping off point, which would be exciting.
Yeah, no, we actually over the past year or two have been really deep diving into a Lens Studio curriculum that is it's kind of we're expanding on it now as we launch our inaugural Snap Lens Academy that Clay, we're so excited, it's actually going to be a part of this summer for a cohort of community college students based in LA and Southern California. So it'll be our first, full 6-week iteration of a curriculum, but we are working with curriculum developers that are out of the Stanford Design School, who are really intentional about kind of bringing the synchronous and asynchronous components together to make it a really, well-rounded experience. So it is something that as we iterate on our learnings over the next, several months, is something that we absolutely want to do. We are all about getting the curriculum and Lens Studio and kind of it as a tool, as I said in the beginning, not only for the creative space, which Clay is, obviously a shining example of how far that can bring you, but also how it can be used as a teaching tool in settings like this. So absolutely.
Yeah, and just to touch on the whole teaching tool side of things, with where technology is going, so Snap has a technology called local lenses. And what that does, it allows people to have a shared reality experience on location somewhere. So you can imagine, being at a museum or being on campus and being able to actually have a layer of augmented reality that explains, explains basically a concept or a visual or provides an experience. When you walk around on a college campus, an example, there's the science building. What if you walked into that area, the green space in front of it, and you experienced all the students' work, in a virtual science lab? I mean, these type of things are becoming reality because what we're doing is we're really sort of transitioning from flat screen into AR and eventually into location-based augmented reality. I had an amazing opportunity to work with the Chinese theater in Los Angeles and map augmented reality to it. And this is a feature you can do in Lens Studio. It's called Landmarks. And there's so many different types of lens templates within Lens Studio. So I would highly encourage everybody to check these out because they've really kind of made it so easy to create AR experiences. So with this landmark example, you'll launch it and you'll see, you can choose a landmark. You could choose Eiffel Tower and you can start designing augmented reality around the Eiffel Tower. And it's completely possible under the right circumstances for that AR layer to be turned on the Eiffel Tower. So people hold their device up to the Eiffel Tower and see the AR augmented reality come to life. And in my instance with the Chinese theater, I love food. So I basically embellished the whole theater with like giant hot dog pagoda, a donut gong, had popcorn flying out of the roof, so that when people went by and they snapped the code, which is pretty much the entry point for every AR experience in Snapchat, you get that snap code or a link and you can launch that inside of the camera. So people launching the snap code, they could point their device at the Chinese theater and actually see it come to life with like popcorn exploding out of the roof. But yeah, it's really, really fascinating to see how quickly augmented reality is progressing. You know, new features that turn you into your favorite animation character. Machine learning is being combined with augmented reality to create these super power lenses. Snap has a dog lens that recognizes 377 dog breeds. So in the context of a classroom, if I'm teaching botany, you know, I can open up PlantSnap and identify thousands and thousands of plants using machine learning and augmented reality. And, you know, for people like Dr. Church in the research space, you know, being able to teach this and walk around with students and launch an intelligent lens in Snapchat that can recognize specific animals, plants. There's just so much opportunity in the educational space with this technology, which I'm super, super excited about. And it all does really start in Lens Studio by launching a template. There is object recognition templates. I had to use one for a client the other day to recognize an egg of all things and, you know, get paid a good amount to do something crazy like that. So the career opportunities with learning AR and you know, Snap's machine learning language and learning this technology, starting out very simple and growing with it is huge. So that's my rant. I'm a huge fan because like I get to do this full time now, and it's because I learned this software.
Awesome. Yeah, and I also just wanted to note for everyone that I did drop the snap code image as a screenshot file in the chat. So I don't know, I know we have a couple of instructors that are projecting this to their classes. So I just would love to, I'm not quite sure if you have the ability to unmute your mic, but we'd love to kind of hear from you all to see if there's any questions from students, make sure everyone's able to pull out their phone and engage with the lens in real time. We'd just love to hear from the audience, either in the chat or, let's see, give you a few seconds. And I'm hoping that the chat is on, but actually now I'm thinking that maybe the chat might be disabled, but we will figure that out in the interim. But yeah, I mean, as far as kind of the application goes beyond this workshop, I know that Clay and I have had conversations on kind of like working with other, you know, organizations and educational institutions to really, again, expand Snap's ability to use Lens Studio in the education space and in the STEM space specifically. So I'm not seeing anything come up in the chat, so I think it might
I was just
be.
gonna say too, please reach out with any questions, because we would love to see you launch that Snap code and go around and send pictures or videos of you using the lens, also being able to customize your own. It would be amazing to see that. And then just for the people in all to see, like, I think it's just so cool to be able to all collaborate as a community, around a specific theme that raises important environmental issues like climate change and all that. And I'm super excited to working with other people and creating these experiences that are so portable but can like teach you so much.
Definitely. But I think with that, I will just thank everyone for joining us today. Clay, thank you. Dr. Churches, thank you so much for providing. It was this perfect kind of intersection of art and design and aquaculture and marine biology. So it's a true pleasure to be able to work and collaborate with you both and Robin and Jenny and the AltaSea team. And again, I just want to note that this is a very high level first kind of look at what's possible. So, all of the teachers and students who are tuning in, we'd love to, again, like Clay said, hear your feedback, see how we maybe can do another session or look into kind of like how we further this as a tool for everyone involved. So just thanks again for everyone for joining today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for the great presentation from all of you. That was so interesting.
Yeah, it's exciting. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that was fun.
Have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Okay.
You too.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Kendall.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.